Based on the true story of Sabrina Butler, the first woman in the United States to be exonerated from death row. Quiet moments, a mother's gentle touch, a baby's sleepy smile, laughter echoing in a sunlit kitchen. The world feels full of promise, each frame a snapshot of ordinary joy. This is where the story begins. Not in a courtroom, not in a prison cell, but in the simple, everyday moments between a mother and her child. Before the headlines, before the accusations, just love and the hope for a better tomorrow. A mother's love is a powerful force. For me, Sabrina Butler, it was my entire world. At 17, holding my son Walter, I dreamed of giving him everything: happiness, safety, opportunity. My love for him was unbreakable, the anchor that kept me steady. But soon, that love would be tested in ways I could never have imagined. The bond I cherished would be cast into the shadows of suspicion and accusation. My story begins not with a crime, but with a mother's unbreakable love, forced to endure the unimaginable. Every parent dreams of a bright future for their child: laughter, love, and safety. For me, Walter was my hope, my purpose. I promised him a world filled with wonder. But sometimes, even the strongest love can't shield us from the storms that come. My dreams for tomorrow were about to be tested. Our life was simple, filled with laughter, love, and small joys. Walter's giggles, bedtime lullabies, and quiet afternoons together. Our world was small, but complete. A universe of two, defined by the love we shared. But that happiness was fragile, soon shattered by tragedy and misunderstanding that changed everything. The day had been like any other, filled with the routines of motherhood. I played with Walter, fed him, and tucked him into bed, comforted by his gentle breathing. But in the night, a heavy stillness woke me. Rushing to his crib, I found only silence. My world tilted, grief crashing in as I held my son, realizing everything had changed in a single unimaginable moment. Time warped and stretched, each second an eternity of panic. Sabrina, a terrified 17-year-old mother, tried CPR on her unresponsive son, her hands trembling. She dialed 911, voice breaking. "My baby's not breathing!" Paramedics rushed in, taking over as she watched, helpless. In the ambulance, she clung to hope, whispering, "Please, he had to be okay." The hospital waiting room was a sterile, impersonal space, its white walls offering no comfort. Sabrina paced, trembling, replaying the night's events, desperate for a different outcome. A doctor emerged, face solemn. Sabrina's hope vanished.
"We did everything we could. I'm so sorry."
The words shattered her. Walter was gone. Her world collapsed in a single unbearable moment. But Sabrina's nightmare was only beginning. The system meant to help would soon turn on her. Sabrina's grief was raw, but before she could mourn, detectives separated her from her family. In a cold room, their questions turned from gentle to accusatory.
"You say you tried to save him. Why are there bruises?"
Sabrina, in shock, explained her desperate CPR. Her words were met with suspicion. The bruises, marks of love, were twisted into evidence of abuse. Her grief was dismissed. The system saw not a victim, but a suspect. The tragedy of her loss was now a criminal case. The interrogation room felt like a tomb. The detective's questions circled the bruises.
"Sabrina, these marks don't add up. Are you sure you didn't lose your temper?"
My desperate attempts at CPR were recast as violence. They'd already decided I was guilty.
"If you admit you hurt him, even by accident, it'll go easier."
I tried to explain, but my words fell on deaf ears. They saw only a profile, not a mother. The hours dragged on, their narrative closing in.
"This is your last chance. Just tell us what happened."
The weight of suspicion was crushing. My nightmare was just beginning. The handcuffs clicked shut. I was no longer a grieving mother, but an accused criminal. Led from the station, my pain was ignored. The world saw a suspect, not a mother. At jail, I was stripped of my name, booked, and branded by a mugshot. Alone in my cell, grief and disbelief consumed me. I was losing myself to a story I couldn't control. My fight for justice had just begun. Before trial, the media delivered its verdict.
Local mother charged with murder of her infant son.
My mugshot was everywhere. The story was sensational, omitting my desperate 911 call and grief. Neighbors speculated. The media painted me as a monster. The public was convinced of my guilt before I saw a courtroom. The pressure on the prosecution mounted. The truth was buried under headlines. I was branded forever, not by facts, but by the story others told. The accusation shattered Sabrina's world and her family's, turning their home into a place of suspicion and grief. Friends drifted away, the community turned hostile, and Sabrina was left isolated, both in jail and in spirit. Her life as a loving mother was replaced by a nightmare of concrete walls and crushing loss. All that remained was the truth of her innocence and the fading memory of a mother's love. Inside Lowndes County Jail, Sabrina's world shrank to cold concrete, silence, and the weight of loss. Each day blurred into the next, haunted by memories of her son and the pain of being judged for a crime she didn't commit. Isolated and reviled, Sabrina faced a stark choice: surrender to despair or find a reason to fight. While Sabrina was isolated, her mother's faith never wavered. She faced heartbreak, judgment, and hardship, but stood by her daughter with fierce love and hope. Each visit, each prayer was a lifeline, reminding Sabrina she was not alone. Her mother's unwavering faith became Sabrina's strength, a light in the darkness. In her darkest moment, Sabrina felt a spark of defiance. She was not a killer, she was a mother who loved her son, Walter. The world had moved on, but she refused to surrender. For Walter, for herself, she would fight. She was no longer just an inmate, she was a fighter. Sabrina found her weapon, a pen and a page. In the prison library, she devoured law books, learning about appeals and her rights. She wrote letter after letter, pleas for help, declarations of innocence, casting them into the world beyond her cell. Most went unanswered, but she refused to give up. One letter, filled with hope, would soon change everything. In a busy law office, a single letter stood out. It was from Sabrina, an inmate in Mississippi, pleading for help. Young attorney Lisa Chanel picked it up, drawn in by Sabrina's desperate words and the story of a grieving mother. Lisa saw innocence where others saw guilt and decided to fight for her. The journey to the prison was long, taking Lisa Chanel deeper into the heart of a state known for its tough stance on crime. When she finally arrived, the gray, imposing walls of the facility were a stark reminder of the world I now inhabited. The visiting room was a cold, sterile space, divided by a thick wall of plexiglass. When I was let in, I felt older than my years, my face etched with the sorrow and hardship of my incarceration. I sat down warily, my eyes filled with a familiar mixture of suspicion and weariness. I had met with lawyers before, public defenders who seemed to doubt my story just as much as the prosecution did. I expected more of the same. But this meeting was different.
"I've read your letters," I began, my voice steady and clear through the telephone receiver. "I've looked at the basics of your case, and I want you to know something before we go any further. I believe you."
For a moment, I was just silent, stunned. The words hung in the air, a powerful and unexpected validation that pierced through the thick armor I had built around my heart. Tears sprang to my eyes, the first tears of relief I had shed in a long, long time. After years of being called a monster, of being disbelieved by detectives, prosecutors, and even my own trial lawyer, hearing someone say, "I believe you," was like a dam breaking. It was a glimmer of light in an endless tunnel of darkness. In that moment, Lisa was not just an attorney, she was an ally, a lifeline. My voice trembled as I finally spoke. "Thank you," I whispered, the words carrying the weight of all my silent suffering. "I just want my life back. I want my name back. I just want people to know the truth." That first meeting forged a powerful bond between the two of us. For Lisa, it solidified her commitment. Seeing me in person, hearing the pain in my voice, and sensing the deep well of my integrity transformed the case from a professional duty into a personal mission. For me, it was the rebirth of hope. For the first time since my arrest, I felt I was no longer fighting alone. I now had a champion, someone who would fight for me not out of obligation, but out of a genuine belief in my innocence. The long, arduous battle for exoneration was about to begin in earnest, fueled by a young lawyer's conviction and a wronged woman's renewed will to fight. With renewed purpose, Lisa Chanel launched a full-scale investigation into my original trial. She knew that overturning a conviction was a monumental task, requiring more than just a belief in my innocence. It required new evidence, something powerful enough to dismantle the prosecution's seemingly airtight case. Lisa began by poring over every page of the trial transcript, every police report, and every witness statement. She was looking for cracks, for inconsistencies, for anything the original defense attorney might have missed. Her meticulous review quickly zeroed in on the testimony that had been most damaging, the statement from a key witness who claimed I had confessed to him. This witness's testimony had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, providing a motive where there was none. Lisa tracked him down, a difficult task that took her into neighborhoods where trust in the legal system was low. She approached him not as a prosecutor, but as a truth seeker. She spoke to him calmly, asking him to walk her through his story one more time. Under her patient but persistent questioning, his story began to crumble. He grew visibly uncomfortable, his answers becoming evasive and contradictory. It became clear that his original testimony was not the solid pillar the prosecution had made it out to be. The breakthrough came during a tense and emotional interview. Lisa pressed him, pointing out the inconsistencies and the devastating impact his words had on my life. Finally, the man broke down.
"I lied," I said, the words heavy with shame. "I was pressured. Sabrina never said she hurt her baby. She was a good mother. She tried to save her baby."
This recantation was a bombshell, the key that could unlock the door to my cell. Lisa immediately had the confession documented in a sworn affidavit. This was the new evidence she needed, a direct refutation of the lie that had sent me to prison. It was a critical piece of the puzzle, proving that the conviction was built not on a foundation of truth, but on a corrupt deal and a coerced lie. The prosecution's case, once so formidable, was beginning to unravel. The first major lie had been exposed, and it gave Lisa the momentum she needed to go after the second pillar of their case, the supposed medical evidence. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, a path to freedom was beginning to emerge from the darkness. While the recanted testimony was powerful, Lisa knew it might not be enough on its own. She had to attack the very heart of the state's case, the medical evidence. The prosecution had successfully argued that the bruises on Walter's body were proof of child abuse. They had painted my desperate CPR attempts as a violent assault. Lisa needed to reframe this evidence to show the jury and the court the truth that had been ignored. To do this, she assembled a new team of independent medical experts, leading pathologists and pediatric specialists who were not beholden to the state. She presented them with all the medical files, the autopsy report, and my own account of what happened. These experts began a thorough and objective review, far from the biased lens of the original investigation. They analyzed the size, shape, and location of the bruises on Walter's tiny body. They considered my testimony, a frantic, untrained teenager attempting a procedure she had only seen on television.
The bruises are perfectly consistent with vigorous and likely improperly performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation, I stated in my report. They are not, in my professional opinion, indicative of the patterns one would see in a case of intentional child abuse.
Another expert focused on the cause of death itself. The original autopsy had been inconclusive but had leaned toward homicide because of the bruising. The new review suggested that a sudden, catastrophic medical event was a far more likely scenario. They pointed to the possibility of sudden infant death syndrome or an undiagnosed congenital heart defect, conditions that can cause a baby to stop breathing without any warning. They argued that in the absence of any other signs of abuse or neglect, concluding homicide was a profound leap, a conclusion driven by suspicion rather than science. The medical evidence was not a sign of guilt, it was a sign of a mother's desperate love. Armed with this new arsenal of expert testimony and scientific evidence, Lisa had successfully dismantled both pillars of the prosecution's case. The witness was a liar, and the medical evidence was misinterpreted. She now had a compelling story of innocence, backed by credible, scientific proof. The narrative had been flipped. I was no longer the monstrous figure from the first trial, but a tragic victim of circumstance, a grieving mother whose frantic actions to save her child had been cruelly misread. The turning point was complete. Lisa now had the evidence she needed to return to court and demand justice for me. The day of the appeal was just charged with this nervous energy. Sabrina sat beside Lisa Chanel in the courtroom, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap. This was not the same terrified teenager from the first trial. She was a woman now, hardened by years of injustice, but fortified by a renewed sense of hope.
Your Honor, this case is a tragedy on every level. A tragedy of a mother losing her child compounded by a tragic failure of justice. The state built its case on a coerced lie and a profound misunderstanding of medical science. The evidence does not show guilt. It shows a mother's desperate, frantic love.
Lisa stood before the judge, her voice clear and confident as she laid out the new evidence. She presented the sworn affidavit from the recanted witness, exposing the lie that had formed the foundation of the prosecution's case. She then called upon the new medical experts, whose testimony systematically dismantled the flawed scientific claims that had convicted Sabrina. The courtroom listened, and honestly, a palpable shift occurred as the truth, long suppressed, was finally brought into the light. Lisa's closing argument was a powerful indictment of the original investigation. Sabrina watched the judge's face, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and hope. Her entire future, her very life, rested on the decision that was about to be made in this room. The judge took time to review the new evidence, the silence in the courtroom stretching for what felt like an eternity.
In light of the compelling new evidence presented, including the recantation of the key witness and the revised medical opinions, this court finds that a grave injustice has occurred. Therefore, I hereby overturn the conviction of Sabrina Butler. You are free to go.
The words were almost too stunning to comprehend. Free! After 6 long years, the nightmare was finally over. A wave of emotion washed over Sabrina, so powerful it left her breathless. Gasps and sobs of relief erupted from her family members seated in the gallery. Lisa Chanel put a reassuring hand on her arm, a smile of triumph and relief spreading across her face. The weight of the handcuffs, the prison walls, and the false accusation began to lift, a crushing burden dissolving into the air. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated victory, a testament to her resilience and the tireless fight for truth. But freedom, she would soon learn, carried its own weight. It was the beginning of a new journey, one of healing and rebuilding a life that had been stolen from her. Walking out of the courthouse, Sabrina felt the sun and freedom for the first time in years. She rushed into her mother's arms, a reunion of tears, relief, and love. It was the first step in reclaiming her life. No longer just a survivor, Sabrina was now a voice for justice, a new beginning. Sabrina realized her story was too important to keep to herself. She spoke out, sharing her pain and hope, becoming a voice for the voiceless. Her words inspired others, shining a light on injustice and giving hope to those still fighting. Sabrina's fight became a mission, transforming pain into purpose, and ensuring no one else would endure what she survived. Sabrina Butler's journey is a powerful reminder that a mother's love is an unbreakable force. It was her love for Walter that gave her the strength to endure the unimaginable, and it is his memory that fuels her advocacy today. Her story is not simply one of suffering and loss, it is a profound testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She faced the absolute worst of a flawed system, a rushed investigation, coerced testimony, and a wrongful conviction, and emerged not broken, but empowered. She refused to let the system's definition of her become her reality. She held on to her truth even when the entire world seemed aligned against her. Her exoneration highlights the critical importance of dedicated legal advocacy. It shows that one person, like the young attorney Lisa Chanel, who is willing to listen and to question the official narrative, can make all the difference. It underscores the necessity of organizations like the Innocence Project, which work tirelessly to correct the gravest mistakes of our legal system. Sabrina's case serves as a stark warning about the dangers of rushing to judgment, especially in emotionally charged cases. It proves that evidence can be misinterpreted, witnesses can be pressured, and the innocent can be convicted. Her freedom was hard-won, a victory for truth over assumption. Today, Sabrina continues to share her story, inspiring hope and demanding change. She is a living testament to the idea that one person's voice can create ripples that lead to a wave of reform. Her life is a tribute to the son she lost, ensuring his memory is honored not with silence and sorrow, but with action and purpose. She reminds us that behind every case file and every headline is a human being, a family, and a life that matters. Her journey from a death row inmate to a celebrated advocate for justice is one of the most compelling stories of survival in modern American history. In the end, Sabrina's story is a closing statement on the enduring power of truth. It may be buried, ignored, or deliberately hidden, but it can ultimately prevail. It requires courage to speak it, tenacity to fight for it, and a community to uphold it. As her own voiceover might conclude, "My story isn't just mine. It's for everyone who's ever been silenced. It's for every person who has been told their truth doesn't matter. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Because the truth, no matter how long it takes, always matters." Her life is a powerful, ongoing testament to that simple, profound, and unbreakable fact. Sabrina Butler spent over 6 years in prison, including time on death row, for a crime she did not commit. She was exonerated in 1995. Today, Sabrina advocates for the wrongly convicted and works to reform the justice system.